Good evening and welcome to the study session of the City Council of the City of Moreno Valley Community Services District, City Successor Agency for the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Moreno Valley Housing Authority, and the Moreno Valley Public Financing Authority. The City Council receives a separate stipend for CSD meetings. I now call the study session meeting to order on April 9th, 2019 at 6:15 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Frank Wright. Okay, please stand.
As we stand before and facing our historical flag, let us honor it in reciting the following. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you, Frank. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Thornton.
Present.
Councilmember Marquez.
Here.
Councilmember Cabrera.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Baca.
Here.
Mayor Gutierrez.
Here. Staff introductions, please.
Pat Hawkes Nares, City Clerk.
Marshall Ironman, Chief Financial Officer, City Treasurer.
Paul Early, Assistant City Attorney.
Tom DeSantis, City Manager.
Alan Brock, Assistant City Manager.
Mike Lee, Economic Development Director.
Rick Sanzmeyer, Community Development Director.
David Lilliver, Acting Chief of Police.
Abdul Ahmed, Fire Chief.
Kathleen Sanchez, Director of Human Resources.
Patty Solano, Parks and Community Services Director.
Michael Wolf, Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
All right, thank you. All right, and we'll move straight into public comments on matters on the agenda. So because this is a study session, the public comments do need to pertain to the matters on the agenda. So City Clerk, how many speakers do we have?
2, Roy Bleckert and Luis Palomares.
How many? You said 2?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Must be Nostalgia Day. Only me and Louise are speaking. And a little bit of nostalgia, and I know one on the dais, and Louise too will remember this. It's still continuing. I had to make a mad dash from the school board meeting to make it over here. So hopefully we can fix that in the future. Well, it's still happening today. This currently. General plan. Move it forward. I don't know what the problem is. Like I say, we're 2 years behind where we should have had a general plan update. The money was approved, I believe $1.75 million 2 years ago. I put a proposal up here to do it for less than $1 million and do it less than a year. I say that because I made these same comments at the Planning Commission when the Skechers building came up last Thursday. Had we worked on the general plan and had a general plan amendment, a lot of these things would be simpler, cheaper, and more business friendly, and they could get done faster. It has an effect all across the board. And I've mentioned it before, and Councilmember Cabrera didn't even know about it, but the Hillside Ordinance is another sticky issue that has been in place for 30 years and blocked development in this city in luxury homes, which is one of the ones that actually put a positive impact on your city treasury in the housing development. And we're still have that in place, and it's still not done after 3 years again of no action. So these things are all very important that you get to move, or you move these things, because it does have a effect on developers, on what they make their decision, and ultimately the quality of life of the residents of this city. Because just in housing, you want to go look at one of the highest resale areas in the city still today is called Steeplechase. It was built in the 60s. Check it out. Luxury homes, big homes on big lots like we used to have. You want businesses to come in. You want people to move in. You want to uplift your community. That's the job you were elected to do. Just like with the Homeless to Work program, Mayor. Told you how that worked, and it got done. It's the same thing. It's up to you, the members on the dais, to direct staff to get these things done. and we will all be better off for it.
Thank you. Next speaker is Louise.
Well, I believe we're on our way there with the general plan, so that's great. I've heard things about that, so I'm glad to hear that. And as far as the budget, every time we've gotten a review or an update about the budget, it's always been good. So I hope that's the case again. I believe it will be. That's all I got to say. And thank you, and I believe the council and the staff's doing a good job. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, thank you, Luis. Okay. All right. She broke her own record. Okay. Just joking. All right. Okay, so we'll move straight to the business items that we have. We'll start off with A1, which is the general plan process. And unless, does the council want to hear this one first, or does, you're fine? Okay. All right, so we'll just go with general plan process first, reported community development.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the City Council, I'd like to introduce Patty Nevins, our planning official, to walk you through a brief PowerPoint presentation, then we'll be prepared to answer any questions of the council.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members.
Good evening.
It's good to be here with you. I'm here tonight to walk you through the general planning process. We have a number of slides here just to refresh you on the process that we go through in working on the general plan and doing an update. And I can entertain any questions you might have while we're doing the presentation. Why update the general plan? It's a guiding document for the city. It provides a policy framework for the decisions that we make. It enhances our quality of life by laying out what we want from the city and giving staff a guiding document to use in making decisions. Provides development guidance. It's a high-level document, so our zoning ordinance provides implementation information, but you need the high level first, and then the implementing documents come after. And it simply provides for better planning. General plan is kind of the classic example of what a general plan is a blueprint for the development of the city, a long-term blueprint for the development of the city. It's a view for the future, so blueprint and a vision. It's a development constitution. Again, it's a high-level document that guides everything underneath it and tells us where we're going. One thing I would add about the general plan is, as a long-term document, once we have a kind of a fresh and up-to-date general plan, we do fewer general plan amendments, not something that we're routinely amending. It's something that is showing us now what we want. And so we assume that the development that comes in, we're looking for something that's consistent with the general plan. Not to say you would never amend a general plan. You certainly would when you have reason to. But when you have a document that lays out what we want right now, there's generally not a reason to do a lot of amendments on it. The required elements of the general plan are in front of you. Our general plan currently labels them a little bit differently, but in general, the 8 required elements of a general plan are land use, open space, safety, housing, circulation, conservation, and noise. Environmental justice is a new element that would be required with an update. A couple of optional elements that we were anticipating incorporating into a future general plan would be an economic development element, as well as a healthy community element. What a general plan is not, it's not a zoning ordinance. So a zoning ordinance implements a general plan. It gives us more specific information, development standards, heights, setbacks, the precise types of uses that we're looking for and where we're looking for them. So a general plan gives us general, zoning ordinance is more specific and gives us implementing information. General plan is not a design guideline document, although it sometimes does have design information in it, may have high level information on what we want our community to look like. And it also does not constitute specific approval of any development project. Again, it's a guide. Project team is a very large project team. If you're to update your general plan, there are a lot of people involved in that process. At the top is the City Council, which is the decision-making body for what the general plan will ultimately have. Also the Planning Commission, which is a recommending body to the City Council. Within the process, also we have the community and community input into helping us determine what that document's going to look like and what we want to envision for the city. City staff takes the lead in developing the document and seeking input and coming up with a draft and final product. And a consultant team helps us put that together and does the kind of heavy lifting in creating the document. The general plan process generally, not to be redundant, but establishes a framework, includes visioning and community engagement. It involves creating the plan and actually putting the information together. There's an environmental document that would go along with the general plan. So an environmental process is a whole document to itself and a whole level of analysis and topics that go side by side with creating the general plan itself. And then the last leg of the journey is review, adhering, and adoption of the general plan and the associated environmental document. A timeline that we might anticipate if we embark on a general plan update would be, as you see in front of you, it's not a quick process, not something that you do in a couple of months. You have a few months there for project kickoff, for an existing conditions report. One of the things that you do is analyze what we have right now. We look back to what we've had in the past, what maybe our challenges, as well as our successes were. What do we want to build on? Take a look at what we have today and then look for future challenges as well and try to address them in advance. In the process of doing the general plan, we have screening alternatives, we select land uses, we have draft documents, and then we come up with final goals, policies, and the general plan elements. And then finally, we have a draft general plan for consideration and a draft environmental document and the finals that are approved. During the general plan update process, there would be multiple opportunities for public input, study sessions. We hold stakeholder interviews. We have community workshops to solicit feedback from the community and get their opinions as to what they'd like to see. We anticipate having online engagement opportunities. We're trying to expand our scope of engagement and come up with new ways to engage the community and engage different people in the community. You probably know, are in the middle of a grant process to develop a toolkit to reach some communities that we've never reached before. So we want to make sure we capture everyone's input in the process of updating a general plan, and we're actively working right now on making sure we have tools and that we know how to engage everybody. So we're not getting just a select few people, but that we're getting everybody, or at least reaching them and making them know that they have the opportunity to provide input. We may have mobile or pop-up events are kind of new for us. We will have a project website, and we anticipate using social media, again, to help reach as many people as possible. And then the public hearing process also is noticed, and adoption of the document and review of draft documents would be available to members of the community as well. That concludes my brief report. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
If I could just interject a couple high-level thoughts. When we talk about a general plan update, sometimes people say general plan amendment, but there's clearly a difference between an amendment to a general plan or to a general plan update. The update is a comprehensive look at all of the elements together. A general plan amendment might be an individual project proponent comes in and says, I'd like to change the land use designation here, or I'd like to change something in your circulation element here, I need to change something in your noise element specific to a project. That's not what we're doing here. What we're doing is that big idea, that big vision. It's a document that does look 20, 25 years or further out, and we try and put that fabric together so that all of the elements in the general plan have to align with each other. So we have to make sure that they're all internally consistent. And so that's why there's a lot of time involved and there's a lot of checks and balances. So just want to make sure we understand that.
Rick, just really quick, or Patty, wasn't too sure if you had it on one of the slides, but I believe our municipal code has a general plan committee Or I think it's somewhere in there, and so I just was wondering when would that go, or where would their input be?
So that the municipal code doesn't have a general plan committee identified in it, but as we develop the document, one of the tools that we would use would be to create some advisory committees or technical advisory or policy advisory committees. And in there, the term of a general plan advisory committee, or GPAC, is something that other communities have used. We would work with our city attorney and the city council to make sure we formulate such a body, if that's where we want to go, that we do it correctly. Those bodies, depending on how they're set up, most likely would be subject to Brown Act requirements and things like that, so we want to make sure we get that right.
Because I think there was one back in the 80s when when they were trying to do the general plan. I believe so.
There probably was.
Yeah. Okay, and then okay, I'll let the other council members. But I just wanted to, I mean, at least for me, I want to just ensure, I think it's important to do, a general plan update, just so that way, we're not having to see these projects coming up, back and forth all the time. It's just consistent to what how our community's growing. I think that's really important. But I also want to just ensure that we're moving forward, though, with the proposed town center, that we're going to be bringing that. And, I think you can do the general plan update and still do a town center at the same time. So that's my comments on that, that we move forward with a general plan update, but we can also, move forward with a town center. Okay.
Would you like some feedback on anything? If there's any questions, I'll be happy to
just
answer.
my comments.
Just comments, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Cabrera.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the presentation as well. I have the first question, which is in regards to one of the slides where you talk about or mention the vision, right? So a while back, we actually allocated the funds to go ahead and move forward with the general plan update. It just we haven't moved forward with actually awarding that contract. So what does that visioning, as it's stated in that contract that we have yet to award, what does that visioning consist of? How broadly does that look at the visioning process? Whoever can answer the question.
Do you want to take the crack at that, or want me to? I'll be happy to answer. She was writing down that question. The visioning step, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to establish kickoff, get all the key players involved, and then we're looking at doing a tour of the city to kind of look at what the existing conditions in the city are, looking at what you call opportunities and constraints. So there's some analysis that goes into visioning, and then we have to do some brainstorming. And this brainstorming is going to be important all the way from the city council in particular down. We like to collect some community input, asking questions about what do we like about our city, what don't we like about our city. We have to ask very candid and honest questions about what are the things that we would like to improve on, how would we define success. So we might have some open-ended questions as part of the visioning so that we can start talking about, what does success look like? What does a city look like? Should we be looking 10 years out? Should we be looking 15 years out, 25 years out? Those are some questions that are making sure that our vision, and everybody's on board with what our vision is. And then we have to identify, in doing this vision, there's going to be checks and balances throughout the entire process, that at some point, is your vision achievable? So we would be, as we develop the alternatives, there might be some financial analysis, or there might be some environmental constraints that are we have to kind of take into consideration. And we have to ask ourselves, do any of these financial constraints or environmental constraints keep us from achieving our vision? Or would we have to do something different to get the vision? So that's part of that step. The vision could also include identifying what number of housing units do you want to have? How many square feet of office development or industrial development, or how much park space do we want to have? Does our vision for the community include more open space, more park space, put that on the table, and then we vet that, and then we make sure that the plan is developed to achieve that vision. And so some of those we don't know the answer to, and that's why we want to get feedback. But there's a lot of question and answers.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, if I could just weigh in a little bit more on that. The process that Rick is describing is the typical visioning process that is part of a general plan update. It's very, very typical. You also would have the option, if you preferred, to engage in a more in-depth standalone visioning process, if that's something you're interested in. The one that Rick described that would be part of a master contract would be done during a first phase when a few other things are going on. Again, as an alternative, if you're interested in just a vision process where 2-3 months could be spent just on that, that's something that we could act on if you have such an interest.
Thank you, Tom. And so that I think that's actually where I'm heading, of doing a broader visioning process, right? So I think that would be larger than what this consultant can do. So looking at, for example, transportation, not just within the city, but also our freeways. So the 60, the 215, and also taking a look at Lake Paris and what we can do there. Also reaching out to, for example, Moreno Valley College and our educational institutions in the city as well. And putting all this together. So downtown Moreno Valley, a town center in the future. We have the amphitheater coming soon. Like you mentioned, Rick, the shopping centers, commercial, retail, how much space do we need for office, for industrial, how much residential? What kind of houses do we want to build in here? So also keeping in mind the hospitals and the kind of jobs. So I like that you threw in their economic development point as well. As an option, because I think that's another thing we need to look at with this visioning and general plan update of what kind of jobs are we trying to bring to the city as well? What kind of partnerships can we form with our educational partners? And so I think that's broader, and I would be in favor of doing a larger visioning process prior to the actual general plan update. Say 90 days, say 3 months, that we do a broader visioning process, whether that's issuing an RFP to see what consultants can come out here and actually draw and paint a picture of what we're looking for. And so that's what I would be in favor of doing.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Cabrera. Next speaker that we have is Councilmember Thornton, Dr. Thornton.
I would also support that that proposal from Councilmember Cabrera. I think that's a great idea. Just for my own clarification, we currently do not have a consultant contracted for that part on the timeline that listed the various stakeholders. So we currently don't have someone working on the general plan.
We have received proposals, but we have no contract in place. We have a consultant that has been vetted and we're prepared to issue a contract to, but we have not issued the contract.
Okay, and then also, so concerning this particular slide where it says study sessions, at what point do we as a city council have opportunities to speak into it individually, as a group? I know you're in the study sessions, right? But as individually, how does that normally work? And then also, approximately how many study sessions have you found during a general plan update are held?
Okay, so one of the first steps when you kick off the project is when you get together and you meet with the team, you actually lay out a refinement of that schedule and you start to define how many times do we want to meet, how frequently should we meet. And you put that into what I believe we were calling in our scope a public engagement process or a public involvement process, a PIP or a PEP. I can't remember what the acronym was. But it would be basically defining who are the stakeholders that you want to outreach to. Some outreach would be meetings with council members or planning commissioners or a GPAC that was mentioned earlier. It could be the technical advisory committee. We may engage outside agencies. So one of the bodies or one of the entities might be a makeup of the school districts, Moreno Valley College, the Western Riverside Council of Governments, and maybe the Eastern Municipal Water District or other agencies that might have a say, or the Airport Land Use Commission. We might have bodies that we put together like that. I don't know specifically how to answer your question because I don't think we have the dates known at this point. But if it's important to the council that we meet every 2 months or once a month, we'd like to know that because that would help us start to define that program. How often would you want us to engage the different entities?
And if the council chooses to do the type of more in-depth visioning that Councilmember Cabrera and Dr. Thornton have mentioned, there would be regular interaction in that, and the council would ultimately, there'd be as many study sessions as required to get to a point where the council members say, yes, this is the vision. And then that's what's really important, and then that would get handed off to the general plan consultant, and it would be consultant build a plan to achieve this. And so the interactions with you and with residents would be a little different. It would be, okay, here's the vision, here's where we're going, are we consistent? So there would not be multiple blue sky processes because we wouldn't get anything done. We would focus the blue sky until we get it right, and then we move forward and get your general plan.
Okay. All right. Next, we have Mayor Pro Tem Baca.
Okay, thank you. And I want to concur with Councilman Cabrera and Councilwoman Thornton on the visioning. I think that's very important. I think that that's going to be a good selling point for the public where they can see the potential of our city. And I think it's going to be fantastic. And saying that, I would expect that we contract with a world-class consultant, agency, company, I don't know what you're going to call them, but someone that has the ability, we're not going to give this contract to the highest bidder. We're going to give it to the person that has experience and is known to do world-class projects. So I want to see that. And as far as the town center, I think all that should be part of it. What we have now is patchwork. We have, something here, something there, all over. And I think that we can, bring it all together because we're not going to demolish anything that I know of. But I think it's very important. And of course, we're going to have our study sessions. I'm sure staff will have individual meetings with each of us. We all have different council districts, except for the mayor, who represents the whole city. But it's very important to me that this be done with a lot of taste and class, because that's what Moreno Valley is.
Okay.
Thank you.
So just in polling the council here, so I basically, there's a consensus to do the visioning process. So to direct the staff to start doing a visioning process, to go about that. I would just leave it at that. Okay, we'll do an RFP and then.
Yes, just for Mayor, we will. We will probably be able to issue an RFP within a week, and we've been working on this, just anticipating that this might be something of interest to you. And so we can put that together, get that out within a week, and start the selection process, and then bring a recommended contract award to the council.
And I think there's consensus that, we want a world-class, someone.
Because Moreno Valley's a world-class city,
Yep.
nothing but the best.
Yes. So, okay, we'll move forward with, thank you, Patty. We'll move forward with a proposed library branch overview, report of city manager.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, I've asked Steve Hargis, our strategic initiatives manager, who oversees our library services contract, to make tonight's presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Council and Mayor.
Good evening, Steve.
I have a quick presentation for you about the library. I'll start with the next slide. Talk a little bit about how popular the library has been in the city.
Yeah.
The next slide.
If the media can do the next slide.
Oh. Hey.
There you go.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, we have some statistics that we
What a
typically
start.
Yeah. That's probably half the presentation. We have some statistics that we keep at the branches of the library, and I thought it would be interesting to show you those for the year of 2018. They're very interesting since that's the first full year that we operated the mall branch. We have served an awful lot of patrons at the library. In particular, the number of new cards, the number of computer sessions, and the attendance to the programs at the libraries have been outstanding. In particular, though, I would like to point out, if you look at the number of new cards in relation to the number of patrons that each branch serves, the number of new cards for every 100 patrons that come to the main branch is about 1.8. But if you look at the mall branch, the number of patrons that get a new card when they come in is over 20%. So the mall branch has really drawn a lot of constituents into the library, and it has grown tremendously. You can also see that in the program attendance numbers. They're doing a great job at the mall branch with the attendance to the programs. We not only keep statistics about the libraries, but we also ask residents to give us comments. The most common comment that we have had at the library, and particularly the mall branch, is in the next year, could we expand the hours? We open, as you know, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday through Wednesday. Thursday through Saturday, we open at 10 a.m. And the most common request has been, could we square up those hours and always open at 10 and then close later in the evening? So in the upcoming budget, you will see a proposal for that.
That was very short.
Yeah, I do have
no
two
thank
more
you and
slides.
questions.
He also manages our technology services division.
That's a good one. Yeah, he does. He's the director of the technology.
Okay. Very quickly, I wanted to discuss a little bit about where we will look to put the new library branch. First, let me explain what I'm trying to communicate with this map. We have the council districts, and then I have put on there the areas where we have the current library branches. The red part is, we call it a heat map of where all of the current library card holders live. So as you can see, we have a lot of card holders right around the libraries. Although in the south, we do have a number of card holders that are south of the library. Then the last thing I'll point out is there's some outlines within the council districts. Those are census blocks with population numbers in them. And the reason we did that is to show you that we have a greater density of population in the southeast part of the city. And between that and the fact that we have a lot of existing library patrons, that seems like the most logical area for us to focus our search for library space. So it won't be exclusive, but we will be focusing pretty much in the southeast quarter of the city.
Okay. And so, Steve, just to clarify to the public, the colors, each of the colors represent a district.
Yeah, a council district?
Yes.
Yes.
So, like, for example, the pink one is one district, the yellow one is the District 2,
Yes.
green is, okay, just wanted to. Okay.
That is correct.
Okay, okay, good.
Then the last thing I wanted to show you is that there are several key milestones that it takes to open up a branch, and this is part of the proposal we have, is that we would look to find space and work on the library during fiscal year 20 and open it up at the beginning of fiscal year 21. So this summer we would focus on locating space, negotiating a lease, and then in the autumn we would design a library around the space that we found and begin to order our equipment and furniture. This next winter, we could obtain permits and bid for tenant improvements, and then that leaves us next spring to build out the library, to negotiate contracts, to hire the staff, install everything, and then when July comes, we should be ready for a grand opening. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions about the proposed library.
Okay, we have questions from Councilmember Cabrera.
Yes.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that presentation. And this is something that I'm really looking forward to. I hadn't actually paid that much attention to, you showed the population, right? So the density in each part of the city. And so if I remember correctly, it said about 44,000 in that really compact area in the southern part of the city.
Correct.
And, you know, we have the college down in the southern part of the city. We have multiple high schools. You have Vista del Lago, Rancho Verde High School. You have a ton of middle school and elementary schools, and actually that's where both school districts actually intersect in the city.
That's true.
Valverde and MVUSD. And so like I said, I'm really excited. I'm happy that we're moving in this direction, and it is definitely something that I would like to see. And I'm glad to see the timeline. It's going to take some time, but we got to do it right. So I'm completely fine with that. And also, if I can just, I guess, request that, you know, libraries are evolving, and you know a lot about libraries. And so we're moving more toward, you know, technology and all kinds of 3D printers, laser cutters, all different kinds of things. And of course, you still need the aspect of physical books. People still need to read paper. But at the same time, I think we can modernize a little bit better. So hopefully that's something that we incorporate. We look at, okay, what are libraries doing in other highly advanced parts of the country and also in other countries? What are these new innovative ideas that people are creating for the new library, the evolution of the library? So hopefully we can have more programs for the kids. You know, maybe that's something we could look at. I know at the mall we do show and tell and things like that, and also maybe even a potential location for classes for adults, for all of our commuters. Maybe in the evening hours, you know, we can have some kind of classes, computer classes, things like that, to help out a lot of our residents so they can become more tech savvy. So I think I'll leave it at that. And again, I really look forward to moving forward with this. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Good support.
Okay. Dr. Thornton?
Thank you. I feel like me and Councilmember Cabrera are like kindred up here. So forgive me for repeating some of the things. So first of all, I actually thought that libraries were becoming a bit obsolete and people were decreasing the amount of libraries due to the underutilization of them and the increase in dependence on technology. I'm a fan of books. I read about 60 books a year, but I do it all online, right? So what I would appreciate if we do move forward with this is maybe attaching like an innovation lab, some out of the box thinking concerning ensuring that you know, we're the next century library in a sense. Of course, kids programming. I understand, you know, having access to computers for people in the public. I know veterans utilize the library. So just some things to kind of ensure that we're depending upon multiple avenues to increase a percentage, which I'm sure you're already factoring all those things in. What I wish this had included was a budget. So how much are we currently spending on the 2 library spaces right now? And what would be the projected cost of having a 3rd branch?
The next presentation is going to tell you a lot about the budget.
Well,
wait, today or?
Yes, today.
Oh,
do you have a proposed amount for the library branch?
There is a proposed amount. This next year, it is $750,000 to locate and design and build out a library. And then...
But then after that, it would be a lot less, right?
Yes, it would be a lot less to operate and maintain it.
About how much would it be to operate and maintain if after?
Steve, can I pipe
yeah,
in
go
here?
ahead, Marshall.
Just to give you the teaser to my next presentation, So similar to the satellite library that we developed at the mall, the first year is about $750,000. That is funded through development impact fees, so that is not out of the general fund. We receive those from new developments to help expand our services. As we look at that actual operational cost, some of it will be depend on the services we provide. We're estimating about $300,000 plus for that new satellite library.
Okay.
And finally, I know two things in Dip, and I don't know if the main branch has this issue concerning homeless. Do they loiter in the library? Like some libraries located in cities have an issue with homeless coming in during the operating hours and departing. So I don't know if that one has, the main library branch has that issue. If you could speak to that, I would appreciate it. And then also, is there opportunity to have like a digital library where we, because on many universities, instead of you going inside the library, you can go online and have a book loaned to you. So is that also a possibility?
Yes, and we do have digital libraries and aspects to that to the library, and that is definitely an area of growth. And because libraries do grow like that, they do not become obsolete. The libraries definitely have some homeless that come by. It's not particularly a problem at the mall site. At the main library, occasionally there are issues, and we do have a security guard on staff during all of the open hours at the main branch. There have not been any significant issues over the homeless. We try and make it a place where they can come because they often like to read or actually use the technology also.
Right. And just to piggyback on the, like as far as like journals and the research, and I think it'd be good to have something like that at the proposed satellite library. I know that we have some in the main library and also online, but just maybe possibly expanding it at this new one, to possibly just different types of resources and, peer-reviewed article searches and all that.
Okay, so more of the academic and
Yes.
magazine type journals. Okay, I understand.
Yeah, because I've actually heard from a lot of some college students actually saying, well, I like the library or at the mall, but I can't really go there because I can't access, ERIC, which is one of the searches, or I
Okay.
can't do this, but I can go to the Moreno Valley College Library, but they're only open at certain times.
Okay.
Just having that option out there. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Baca?
Okay, my question was similar to Dr. Thornton regarding the cost. So is it going to be comparable to the mall in District 1, or I'm sorry, the mall? And what size are we looking for, and do we have an idea of where it would be located?
We don't have an idea of where it would be located now. We're looking for something at least 4,000 square feet. That's kind of the minimum for a functional mall. For some perspective, the library branch at the mall is roughly 5,000 or a little under 5,000 square feet. So we can't go too much smaller, particularly with the ideas of innovation labs and things. And in terms of where we're looking, it's going to focus primarily on the southeast end of town, but we will be looking a little north of that also.
Okay. And I support that as well, a proposed library branch. I think that's a great idea. 750,000 with the diff funds and then 300,000 just operating. I think that's not that bad, and especially in that area of District 4. I think it's really important because as you can see with the heat map,
Yes.
There's a lot of patrons there. Okay.
Telling.
So there's direction to move forward, okay, with this item, and we will. Thank you, Steve.
Certainly.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to A3, which is the city manager proposed budget overview fiscal years 2019-20 through 2020-21. We have report of financial management services.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. Steve led a perfect segue into my presentation this evening. For the City of Moreno Valley, we're looking towards our next 2-year budget that would cover fiscal years 1920 and 2021, essentially starting July 1st, 2019. One of the things, just looking at the calendar, the last study session we had with the City Council was on February 12th. We essentially kind of talked about the foundations of the budget. We then took that out to a town hall meeting for the public to provide us comments. Where that leads us to today is kind of an overview of where this budget is building into really kind of what accomplishments were coming out of this budget. And then that will lead forward into more analysis and review on the budget as we work through the Finance Subcommittee and bringing that item back to the City Council for additional review. Now, as we talk about the budget, one thing I always want to start with is kind of our foundation. We've talked a lot about the city having a 6-year balanced budget. We've gone through a recent credit rating analysis with our bond issue for MVU. Some of the things that they provided comments back on were that our strong fiscal controls, strong policies, excellent management in this city, so that it's kept us as a very strong, fiscally viable city in this state of California. Just wanted to kind of echo that, but the other side that goes with that is, as we work towards maintaining the quality of life, the City Council has been very proactive to reach out to the citizens in the community through the telephone town hall meetings, through, again, the town halls that we've done with the budget, the study sessions, all of those items. Even with the budget, through this process, we've had open our Balancing Act software to get feedback, to allow the public to give us information. We've also initiated the Join the Conversation survey, which has allowed more input. So as we look towards the budget, it takes in a lot of the community considerations. But again, Momentum Moval was the foundation as we did the last budget and as we do this one. The council has provided us direction, vision on what they really want to see, and we try to strive to build the budget around those goals that you've provided us. Some of the other foundations as we work towards the budget, this is kind of a repeat of the February 12th presentation, but we really look at cost-saving measures. We never want to just roll the budget over and increase items. We always look for structural efficiencies. We look for things that we can do a little bit differently, investments in technology in different areas. So we'll focus a little bit on how we're improving some of the operations. And again, this just kind of echoes when we talk about community priorities. So you have feedback, what we've received through surveys and through our Join the Conversation. There are really 7 items here. A lot of it is, as you're aware, maintaining public safety, maintaining the roads, enhancing recreation and youth programs. That kind of echoes the same message. We've heard it in most city council meetings and per your direction in most things that we do. So this budget is built on those principles as well. So focusing this year on Momentum Moval and really what does this budget deliver, or what accomplishments does it provide to the city? We'll walk through these 6 key strategic priorities of the city. First area is economic development. Our goal here is to maintain the economic development team's efforts, which is focused on attraction, retention, and really growing businesses within the community. So we maintain that budget to make sure that our department, our economic development team, has the support that they need to really be proactive out there in bringing businesses. One of the things that makes us unique and makes us successful is we don't wait for businesses to knock on our door. We go out and grab them, and we bring them to this city. So that helps with the marketing efforts. One of the things, too, is our Employment Resource Center. So as we have businesses here, we want to make sure that they're successful and sustainable. We provide sources through there to not only help recruit new individuals for those businesses, but we also help train and help those job seekers find jobs within the organizations that are coming to the city. One of the last items here is we want to look where to add staff that will add value back to the community, where we can make some adjustments in staff in those areas. For economic development, they currently have a management analyst position that's unfilled at this time. We're just making sure that you're aware we're going to be providing funding on that so that the team can look to fill that position in the future. And with regards to planning, as we talk about the general plan and other activities there, we want to make sure that the planning resources are there. So we'd be looking at reclassifying a senior planner up to a principal planner position, and that will be of great value through the general plan process as well. With economic development, just to underscore some of the successes and items that we have in here, my favorite project is the quarter project. gas tax, gas stations, hotels, everything that brings value to this community, and it's set in a location that is a regional draw to bring dollars to this community that we can reinvest into those needs and priorities from the council. There's a couple different projects that you're aware of. Prologis is great as well. But that bar on the bottom, I always like to echo and remind individuals that as economic development brings in businesses, the dollars sometimes lag. Property tax dollars, sales tax takes a little while, along with the development process itself. So they're doing a great job. Businesses are coming in. Dollars sometimes trickle in on the back end. So we always have to be cognizant of those situations. And just some hints as to things that we're looking forward to in the future. Again, the World Logistics Center, one of the things that makes this city a world-class city is we look towards the future. But the disposition of surplus lands, other projects that are coming in, how we even look at the city for a new town center. As we move into the second strategic priority, it's public safety. That's been a goal. We've been providing investments slowly over the years. But one of the things is in the last budget, we provided funding, about $1.4 million for a new fire truck. That's in process, and that new fire truck will be delivered over the next 2-year budget. Our citywide camera system, that has been a successful program in solving many crimes. It's helped support or complement the public safety operations. Just one thing we don't always think about is it costs $200,000 to $300,000 a year to maintain that system and keep it operational. So that's an investment that we continue moving forward to really supplement public safety in the community. As we look at ways to increase deputies in the field, one of the items we're proposing is bringing in 4 community service officers. What this allows is some of the support within the office so that those deputies can be back out in the field as quick as possible and doing the functions that better serve the community. So this is a way through talking with the police chief how we can kind of complement what they're doing, get things out there at a much lower cost so we're efficient as well as being productive. The last item on this one is with regards to the fire department. We've been looking at some additional support for the fire chief. When you're working in the police department, there is an administrative lieutenant. So in this capacity, we do not have that in our fire department now. So we'd be looking at reclassifying an administrative assistant to a management aide to provide a little bit more support for that operation as the chief many times gets called away to emergencies and other fires. We do have some operational support. Now the council has taken a lot of actions with regards to commercial cannabis business permits. One of the things I wanted to kind of provide you feedback on that is as we look towards the future and we look at up to 43 permits, this is how it impacts our public safety. With any of those permits, they provide it's about a $58,000 annual permit fee. What that fee pays for is essentially hours in police, fire code, and the city attorney's office. This is to make sure that those operations have a positive impact to the community, and they're not demanding services that could be better provided out in other areas within the city. So through those, I mean, there are significant hours that we could see that provide overtime and other deputies in the field. Just for police, that could provide, about 3.5 new deputies out in the operations. Now, when we look at police as a whole, we're projected to have a service level of 0.79 officers per 1,000. When I did this presentation 2 years ago, we were projecting 0.74. So we are continuing to enhance our public safety services, get more boots on the ground, not just make them more efficient, but actually get more bodies out there to provide services as well. Some of this then works into, those are supported officers, so they do get other support through our contract with Riverside County. And really, the last item on here is you see that 41 dedicated positions. These are items that we enhance our normal patrol. This is actually K9. This is the community service officers. These are our motors to provide that they're out in the field. Now, the public safety or the police portion of the budget is typically the highest cost factor. They run 40% plus of our budget, so we're always concerned with the contract rates that are passed through by the county. Some of the initial projections were as high as 9.5% over the next 3 years. I'm actually ecstatic for once, which is doesn't happen much for a finance person, but we had a good meeting with the sheriff today. The indications are that the numbers will be better, and they're working to reduce these. So as we built the budget over the next 2 years, instead of 9.5%, we were able to build it with a 7% number. That provides savings that we can reinvest into other operations and provide more accomplishments. Now, when we look at the fire side, just a recap on our fire operations. Right now we have 75 contract positions out there, 7 fire stations, and we're running 7 engines, a truck, and a squad. Then we also have the EOC, our Emergency Operations Center, and our prevention, which is provides public safety on a different aspect with regards to inspections and new construction. Library. So Steve gave away all the excitement. So depending on our study session, we're looking at different things. So, but in addition, what we didn't touch on is we're maintaining the library at the mall. We're increasing the mall library hours. I believe it's 13 hours a week that we're looking at. So we've seen a lot of demand, and we're looking to be a little bit more flexible and provide more services there. With regards to the main library, we have additional ADA improvements along with some facility improvements that we'll be looking at to reinvest in there. As we have a lot of traffic, we want to make sure that it's maintained as a good facility for the community. And the new satellite library, I'm excited to see that coming forward. We did it last time in the 2-year budget, and so the process should work well to identify and build one in the south section of the city. One area that's come up a lot over the last year, the rains were not our friends. I won't ask Michael Wolf to give us the dissertation on what asphalt is and how it stays connected. I'll just let you know that he's doing a lot of efforts and making sure he gets as much money as possible to maintain those streets. So some of the things that we've done, because when I talk about infrastructure, it's everything with the city, from our facilities to our utility, not just roads. So Moreno Valley Utility is currently in the process of completing the retrofit of these streetlights. So if you recall, council directed us to purchase over 11,000 streetlights from Southern California Edison. We've been completing that purchase, and as we complete it in multiple phases, we're transitioning these to LED streetlights. So about the northwest portion of the city has the residential streetlights have been converted. They're going through and modifying the arterial streetlights, and you'll see them continuing throughout the year completing this project. Following the recession, one of the things we looked at was replacing our fleet. Many of our vehicles had gone beyond their useful life. A lot of that reinvestment has been made. We're kind of winding down over the next 2 years of the budget, so that investment is going to be less on replacing vehicles. It's good to see we have a fleet that's operational. It saves us in maintenance and operations cost, and we've also taken that opportunity to look at what we could reduce in terms of fleet needed. We will continue maintaining our existing facilities. Replacement of the facilities maintenance software. One thing that we've been looking at and what council directed in mid-year was the replacement of the software for managing our facilities. What we want to do is make sure we're taking a proactive steps. We want to make sure that we know what the deferred maintenance is in all of our facilities so that we can make the decisions to take action and save the money in the long run by taking care of those issues that need to be resolved today rather than tomorrow. And the last item on this one is Public Works will be bringing forward shortly a capital improvement plan. That plan has about $40.5 million of improvements within that. So I've kind of bundled that into our total investment in infrastructure over the next 2 fiscal years. So with regards to our gas tax that goes into our street maintenance and other operations, we'll be receiving about $9 million over the next 2 fiscal years, about $6.8 million, which is the SB1 funding for street maintenance, 1.6 million CDBG. So from the last discussion, we have about 800,000 each year that will go towards improvements in streets out of that funding source. 8.2 million in Measure A, and then we get into grants and other items. Now, out of that 40 million in grants, a lot of this is dedicated funding, and I think that's one of the things we want to point out with all of these infrastructure projects. Many of them are restricted funds that can only be used for certain purposes. You're familiar with gas tax and Measure A, we can spend on those. CDBG is restricted. When we get into the grants, we're looking at some projects for Moreno Beach, the Juan Bautista Trail. That spends a significant amount of that $40 million out of those 2 funding sources. But these are restricted for those items. Now, One of the things that we keep looking at is with our pavement management plan and what we require for annual street maintenance. The estimate from Public Works is about $10 million a year that we need to invest in maintenance of our streets. What we're allocating right now is about $5.2 million a year. So that continues to be a need and a focus that we're looking at how we can reinvest that, what other revenue sources we can provide to that to make sure that our infrastructure needs are addressed moving forward. The fifth strategic priority, our beautification, community engagement, and quality of life. So we're continuing the Homeless to Work program. That's been very successful. Some of the results from that are out of our very small homeless population. We've actually had 17 individuals that have acquired employment and moved off the street. A very high success rate. I think at the beginning I would have been happy if we just had one. 17 is outstanding. We're looking at additional investments for highway off-ramps, the trash cleanup in those areas, along with other bulk waste or bulky item pickup on the streets. We have some dumping issues in the city, and we're addressing those, making sure that we're keeping the city as beautiful as much as possible. There are continued lighting, landscape, and maintenance districts. If you're familiar with the special districts throughout our community, they are one of the areas that focus on the beautification, the grass, the medians, the landscapes, the right-of-ways. They're focused on investing a lot of that as we move forward to, again, deal with drought-tolerant landscape and improve the area. We'll continue funding with telephone town halls. One of the things is, as a public entity, we always want to make sure that we have transparency out there. The city clerk's department is looking at working to purchase the new Laserfish software. That increases our ability to share public records. It enhances what we have today and allows a better record management system within that. And again, just some of the other little things, the hire Moval programs, we have those in the budget as we're looking to enhance those as well. Through CDBG, we have critical home repair and cleanup. That's about $500,000 that comes out of the community development block grants in those areas. And of course, the completion of the amphitheater in the next 2 years. So our last strategic priority is the youth. Now, one of the things that I've kind of looked at is how much this city invests in the youth in our community. When you look at this, activities that are outside the city, between our apprentice program, Summer at City Hall, Asterisk, all of those items, you can see we have $7.5 million in the ACES program. We have $800,000 in childcare. We have crossing guards. Not only that, Parks is very diligent in having 450 programs in those soaring guides while maintaining over 600 acres. What this means is this is about $20 million that's invested in our youth every year between these programs and Zone A. So that's a very good investment and a great investment in the future of this city. Now, as we look at the city overall, we look at staffing, some of the components here. One thing that I always want to reinforce is as we come through the council on quarterly meetings, we have many discussions on staffing. We've gone from what we had in 2010 and 11. We had about 426 employees at that time. We're down at 361. We've found to be focused on different operational efficiencies to make sure we didn't have to have a large staffing number. Now, on the right side, I've talked about some of these position modifications, but overall in the next 2-year budget, we're only looking at half a body to be added in this budget. So again, we're looking at ways to be efficient and save dollars on the bottom line. The other way to look at this is we kind of surveyed other jurisdictions to see where their staffing ratios were. Now, it's always difficult because you have to standardize that to make sure you're comparing the same numbers. Some cities have in-house police, fire. We have crossing guards and animal control. So we standardize these numbers to make it kind of apples to apples. And what you'll see that Moreno Valley's staffing per 1,000 capita is about 1.5. Now, the average for these cities is about 3. So what you find is that we try to focus on saving those dollars, being a little bit more efficient, using contracts for one-time services, variables and development and other items. That allows us to be much more responsive and quick in what we do. That's one of the things that helps us in those areas. So as we get to the numbers, what we're looking at in the general fund, currently the amended budget is about $112 million. It'll stay just slightly above that. Overall, it's only a 1% increase that we're looking at on the general fund. And then the second year of the budget would be about 116 million plus. The other operations are community service districts, focus on those special districts and parks. They're about flat. Successor agency is some of our activity in unwinding the former redevelopment agency, debt service on those items, and then you have other operations here. What you do not have in this number at this point is the capital improvement plan. As I mentioned, it's about $40.5 million. Most of that falls into, I believe, special revenue funds. The next slide just gives you a comparison when we're looking at the general fund operations and our departments. What you'll see is when we look at public safety, many times it's thought of as police and fire, but public safety stretches well beyond that. As we talked about fire, they have a whole prevention unit to do inspections and help with buildings and inspections on the new construction as well. But community development, public works, you can't deliver police or fire without roads. And community development's goal is to have not only safe planning, but to make sure that everything that's constructed is not a health and safety hazard. So when we're looking at public safety, I'm kind of grouped all four together. But overall, what we really want to focus on is the proposed budget. That's just barely over 1% on what we're looking at proposed increases. So we're reinvesting the dollars and trying to be as efficient as possible. And even when you look at 2021, that's a 3.4% increase. So given that property taxes tend to rise about 2% on average, we're in that conservative range, and we're also looking forward to being responsive as sales tax issues, other things happen. As the council is aware, we do come back on a quarterly basis, and if we find revenues are higher, we come right back to you for reinvesting those revenues back into the community. But this makes sure that we're stable and strong as we look towards the future. So where this leaves us on the top end with the revenues is we're basically, if you look at 18-19, you'll see that there was a one-time investment of $1.1 million back into streets. That's where that number is upside down on that variance. As we look towards the future, we'd basically be flat, making sure that all dollars are reinvested as much as possible. Some of the other factors that we also have to take into consideration as we build many of these things, we're always concerned about state takeaways. When redevelopment was dissolved, we lost a lot of money. That's created issues with affordable housing, homeless, other areas that we're continuing to struggle with and find new means to address those items. And we just have to make sure that we're always looking for where those money grabs are. We've talked historically about the police contract and working with Riverside County. They're starting to make some adjustments there, but we always want to keep in consideration that things can change quickly. Further outside the 2 years, just kind of gives you a recap. Expenditures continue to increase slightly, mostly to public safety is where we see the largest increase. Revenue growth from existing sources is flattening. As we continue to grow, we hope to see more and more. But when you have $20 million in sales tax, the incremental growth becomes smaller and smaller, but we're looking forward to many of these new projects opening and seeing the actual impact that comes through. And really what we've done is we've balanced the budget and looking towards the future. Some of that key is economic development. We want to see these projects continue to come in. This kind of gives you the line of historical. So when you look at that red line is our expenditures, blue lines are our revenue, so you can see the recession, what we were hit with. That's why we always look at our reserve funds and the cash flow out of those. We've had a couple of years that we've replenished those reserves. And then the last 2 years, we've done some strategic reinvestment from some of those funds as they were available, focusing on those needs of streets and other items. And as we look towards the next 2 years of the budget, we'd be balanced with projections to maintain balance as long as we're continuing to have economic development within our community. Outside of the general fund, just briefly, community service districts, parks, landscape, the library, those areas. What you'll find here is as they're trying to invest in beautification, many of these districts have fund balances that are available solely for that purpose, and so we're beginning to reinvest more and more of those funds. That's why you'll see that bottom line upside down just slightly. With the Moreno Valley utility, the council took some strategic steps to issue the last bond item that will help them build reserves. And as we look towards the ENCO contract expiration, we'll be looking for their independence. Their numbers remain positive looking towards the future. And at some point, they'll be fully funded on reserves and independent from the general fund. So next steps, we'll continue through the budget process. We'll continue to solicit feedback and input. And based on council's direction, we'll reach out and take that feedback.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, you've gotten a lot of detail tonight. I appreciate your patience with us and your engagement. We've kind of compressed the number of presentations this year. In other years, we'd come study session after study session and give you bits and pieces. We thought it might be helpful to give you a good comprehensive look. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to make sure that we are on the right track. We've built this based on the strategic plan, based on the priorities you've expressed to us, based on the actions you've taken during the last 2 fiscal years to direct additional resources to things like roads, public safety, youth programs. So we appreciate your patience, and we look to your guidance.
Just a couple questions, Marshall. These new proposed positions, would they be proposed in the amended budget or in the next or the other 2 years?
The positions that are proposed, and
Which include the admin assistant, well, actually just all of them.
yes, so as you'll see, there's only a 0.5 position increase. So really, most of those are reclassifications.
Well, those, the
Yes.
reclassifications.
So what we're trying to do is, as we look to provide better and better service in the community, sometimes we reassess those positions and see if we can get a little bit more out of those. As I talked with the planning, what we have is multiple senior planners, but we don't have a principal planner. This provides a succession plan, but we also have critical projects over the next couple of years, including the general plan, that we need a much stronger resource out of that individual to make sure the general plan goes smooth.
Okay, so yes, is it part of the amended budget or?
It's part of the 2-year budget.
The 2-year budget?
Yes.
And then the management analyst for the EDD, so that would be part of the 2-year budget. Is there not a position for that right now?
The position is there. We just want to make sure you know that we're providing funding to fill that position. It's currently vacant.
Okay, because we added, if I recall, we did a reclassification. We created, made a manager. So there's 2 managers, well, there's 3 managers. And then there's, I believe, 1 aide, management aide.
So what economic development has done, historically there was a senior management analyst that was reclassed into the other position. I believe it's a program manager at this time. What they've done is with their management analyst position, some of them have been underfilled with a management aide. So the position control approved by council was a management analyst.
But what I'm referring to is that we had a different position. I think it was a management analyst, and we changed it to a manager position, project manager position.
You're correct. That was a senior management analyst, and that went to a program manager. These positions initially were approved as part of the strategic plan, and we've built them into the budget. The direction was over a few years, basically double the amount of staff that we had working on our economic future here in the city. As Marshall mentioned, what Mike did was underfilled those at a lower level, which produced cost savings. But now with as his program has matured, we think it makes sense to put the funding in to fill at the level that the council initially approved in the control roster.
Okay. Mike, did you have a management assistant at one point?
Currently, we have 3 management assistant positions right now, and these, as the city manager alluded to, they were underfilled as a management analyst.
Because I do recall we had, I recall it was you, Michelle, and then there was Jackie, and then I think it was a management aide, and then I think it came back, and we added 2 more management assistant positions.
If I may, in the last 2-year budget, prior to that, economic development had 1 management analyst. We added 2 positions in the 17-18 budget and 1 position in the 18-19 budget. So those were the 3 that we added. That leaves them with the 4 positions.
I guess my question is more of, you know, at what point do we actually, like, do we know, or are we looking ahead of, ahead of the schedule? Okay, we're going to need a certain amount of positions coming up. Because it seems to be like the same, like every time it comes to the council, it's like, okay, these are new positions, and it seems like.
This is actually within the number that was in the strategic plan. And what we've done is roll them out slowly. Rather than do them all at once, we've rolled them out slowly so they're bringing on board and they're at the right levels when we need them.
Okay.
But it is not, it's not a higher number of positions than the council's already approved.
From the strategic plan.
Correct.
Now, the permanent administrative assistant, what would that position be doing?
I'm sorry, with regards to the one new position, so in the city attorney's office, they currently have a temporary position that's performing a lot of functions. They're looking to take that and create a part-time administrative assistant. So aside from the current duties that the temp is performing, what we'll see is additional duties that they may need to perform on with regards to the cannabis permits and some other activities. So as we looked at the cannabis component, out of that permit fee, we will have additional revenue that will offset some of this cost.
So would they be just working only on the cannabis permits, or, because I know we contract pretty much all of it out?
Actually, the position will be at an administrative level, just doing administrative work, but it's going to take some of the administrative burden off of our paralegal, who right now is backfilling our executive assistant, who is working for both the city manager and city attorney's office. So our paralegal is going to be taking on more paralegal responsibilities as we've offset the administrative duties to what's currently a temp. And what we're looking to do is expand the hours of that temp into a part-time position so that we can take care of all those duties.
Okay. And then I do want to see the Moval Learns. I want to see that added in there, so that way it can come to the finance subcommittee.
Yes.
So just make sure before it comes to the next finance subcommittee to have the Moval
My understanding was with Moval Learn that we would actually bring that in the current fiscal year at the third quarter review. So we would come forward with that. So it wouldn't be part of the next 2-year budget. We'll bring it forward before then.
Okay, definitely. Okay. And Councilmember Cabrera.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question on the part-time administrative assistant for the city attorney's office, the fiscal impact of that. So you mentioned cannabis, and we are getting some fees, right? It's not revenue, but we're getting some funds through fees for the applications, et cetera. So is that new part-time position being fully funded by those fees that are coming in, or is there some general fund impact as well?
So currently what they're utilizing is a temp, and so they're funding that temp through their temp salary. We'd be looking at removing that temp and providing this part-time career position. So we'd have the temp budget, we'd have cannabis budget. So essentially we're looking at near neutral or net neutral on the dollar impact. So that's one way we've looked at it.
That'd be good, and I know there's a ton of work, so I'm glad to see that you'll get a little bit more help there. And so overall, I mean, I like how it's presented. I definitely agree with the mayor as far as Moval Learns. I think that's something that we want to continue investing into the education for our youth here in town. And so also with economic development and planning, I mean, obviously we wish there was more funding for every single department so we could do more. But I think right now, economic development and planning, it would be more on the policy making side instead of just adding more funding to those two departments. But the reason I bring that up is because we definitely want to continue that, and we want to grow that. The economic development, all the construction, we want to see sticks going into the ground, and so we want to keep that momentum going. So I just thought I would mention that, and I'm happy with what we're doing. Balanced budget. Thank you to everyone there on our staff, and we're actually increasing our revenues, our reserves actually. So I'm really happy with what I'm seeing, and thank you for the presentation.
Okay. Dr. Thornton?
This probably already exists, but Tom, could you tell me, so concerning staffing, Is there a proposed plan that has been conducted amongst all departments to say, and I know you're saying that these positions already exist in the strategic plan and that we've been rolling them out slowly, but is there a plan that already exists that shows the positions that still currently need to be reclassified or filled and what their job description is and when they are forecasted to be began across all departments?
Sure. That's an excellent question, Dr. Thornton. What we have, let me tell you first the staffing philosophy that I've used to guide our recommendations to you. And first and foremost, it is to ensure that we have a base of employees that can be sustained through economic changes. One of the things that this city has seen, I've watched it from the outside over the last almost 30 years, and the city has gone through very cyclical staffing changes. During the most recent recession, this city jettisoned about half of its general fund staff. That is, I'm sorry, that none of us were involved in that, so we can freely say that is no way to do business. It's disruptive to service. It's disruptive to people's lives. It's disruptive to the city organization. So the approach I've taken when department heads come and say, you know, it would be great to have a permanent position to do X, Y, or Z, I'm typically, the response is, we're going to handle peak workloads through contracts, kind of peaker service. So we maintain a base that we can sustain, barring complete economic calamity, but we'll be able to sustain it for a downturn. And so where we increase and contract is in the contract supplemental services. So given that, what you are seeing is every now and then something will come up. Generally, reclassification is because a department has found a better way to do something. We've gone through that from Public Works to the clerk's office to the city attorney's office. Looking at things, we're always looking at things. Is there a better way to do this? If we change a classification, can we get more for our money and do some new things? So I wish I could forecast all the wonderful ideas our team has, but I encourage them to keep having those ideas as they come, and we'll evaluate them, and if we think they merit your consideration, we'll bring them to you. But from an overall standpoint, our plan is to maintain a sustainable base of city staff, and as Marshall showed you that chart, at less than half of what the average staffing is, it keeps us a very lean, and I won't say mean, I say lean and efficient organization. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it is helpful. I just think it might be helpful for me, I don't know about my colleagues here, is if there were a guide, especially for those positions that, like you mentioned, are already in a strategic plan that we're rolling out, so that when they do come before us, right, because you guys are the experts, these are your department, so you know where the need is at, that we have a better understanding and we're able to have that information concerning job description, what responsibilities they would be having that's different from now, the need, you know, and that maybe that just might be helpful, because I want to support you guys in that, because it's, you know, it's needed for our city as we continue to grow. My next question is concerning the police department contract rate slide. I think it was page 19. So you mentioned you had a meeting with the sheriff earlier. Originally, it was estimated that it was going to go up due to the cost for police specifically. It was going to go up 9.5%, $5 million each year. The sheriff mentioned that it's going to be 7%. I have a couple concerns. When you look, there's another graph that shows that the projected rate right now that we're spending is $44 million, and by 2021 we'll be spending $48.9 million. And I know that that's due to, you know, the county and the way that they negotiate. But, you know, we're spending a majority of our budgets going to police, and so. I'm wondering, I know that we did a assessment about potentially looking into starting our own police. I just want to make sure that we're giving the community and ourselves enough information of what is the benefit of sticking with the sheriff and paying all this money compared to joining with the other sister cities, the neighboring cities, and making our own police force. It's a lot of money, and I expect that is going to continue to rise.
And if I may, we share your concern. We see the cost increases. We want to work with them. We did start the analysis on the Joint Powers Authority to look at different public safety services and how we could contract those or bring those in-house. Those are still out there as an item. One of the things that we've been going through, though, is the transition of the newly elected sheriff. We also have additional Board of Supervisors that were elected. This changes the playing field, and what we want to do to make sure that we're taking the best path for our citizens and the city is work with them to see what they're going to project as well. The sheriff has kind of made a stand that he wants to reduce cost for the city. The prior Board of Supervisors was encouraging cities to go and do it themselves rather than contract with the county. That has changed, and so they're trying to find ways to hopefully encourage us to stay. We work better as partners, and we hope not to see these costs. Initially, like I said, we were looking at 9.5%. The cost today, what they were projecting for, on the high end, what they were projecting for was 5% on the police and an additional 2.5% that the county's looking at. So that's 7.5%. So we've already seen it go down. What the sheriff has done, though, is he's actually brought in some retired captains to, for the first time in any period of time I've heard, actually look at cost reductions within the sheriff's department and seeing how they can encourage the county to do that as well. That's a great thing because we've been talking to them for decades, trying to get them to focus on cost efficiencies, just as we have done within the city through the recession and following that. And we're starting to see a different mindset there. So what we're hopeful is that we'll see that come through in the rates. The 18-19 rate is looking to be substantially lower than what they had planned before. And we're hoping that what we see out of this team over the next year is that they'll provide us different alternatives and we can make a much more informed decision between bringing it in-house or through the county.
Today's meeting, the sheriff attended. Marshall and Felicia and Dave Lelevere and I attended. It was unlike any other contract city, and they retitled it as a contract city partners meeting. I've been going to those meetings for years, and this is unlike any meeting we've ever had. It was open, it was constructive, and we heard the sheriff himself pledge his commitment to reduce costs. And as Marshall says, when we saw the cost for this current year at 2.19, it's retroactive back to July 1. That's a really strong start. And I'll just give you one example of something that I've never seen before out of the Sheriff's Department. They looked at their budget and their charges to us and said, well, you know what? We haven't been putting deputies in academies to fill vacancies. Why would we charge the cities for this service when we're not providing it? I mean, it seems pretty basic, right? But that was never really talked about before. That drove our current year rate down by 0.5%, and that was all on their own. And so we are really, really encouraged by what we heard today and the commitment from the sheriff and his senior staff to work with us.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Baca.
On section 4 of the strategic plan, that was the infrastructure. But as far as the budget, do we have what after all this budget, all the parts of it, what do we have left over as revenue? And I don't know the exact term that we use to refer to the
like reserves?
Reserves, thank you. I was having one of those moments. What do we have left in reserves? Okay.
So one of the things when we look at all of these investments, they're coming from different grants, they're coming from development impact fees, many different areas. Now, when we look at the general fund, what the council has done is made sure that we plan for the next recession. We set up the economic uncertainty fund, which is about 10% of operations. We've got about 99.2 million. We have an unassigned reserve, which is our normal cash flow. That's sitting over 21 million. And our operating reserve fund at 11 million. So We've got a couple different reserves. As I said, they're funded. They meet our minimum levels, and they're growing slightly. That's why over the last 2 years, we've taken some positive revenues and reinvested those into streets.
I think she means each year.
I'm sorry.
Like each year, right? Like each year, what would be the
How much
reserves for each of those years?
Well, when we're looking at the general fund, sorry.
Okay,
When we're
that's
looking
all
at the
good.
general.
I was going to let you finish.
The general fund, it's about $9,000 to the positive year one, and I believe $16,000 in year two. So that's the general fund. So we've reinvested everything we could in those. When we're talking about infrastructure, though, you do have all grants that we need to spend the grants. We have gas tax Measure A, SB1. Those are being fully invested back into the community.
And then, of course, more will come back if the sheriff contract costs are a lot lower each year. So that'll go more that we can use for other things. Okay, all right. So it seems like there's consensus with moving forward with a proposed library branch. Also, the visioning process for the general plan. Get that going underway, like a 90-day window. Is that good? 90-day window? Yeah, 3 months, okay. And then move forward with the proposed budget. And just make sure that if you could add the MoVal Learns program into there, and so that we can be in the finance subcommittee. Thanks. And then for this year and for the following 2 years. Okay. All right, and we'll go ahead and okay. Mayor Pro Tem Baca, did you want to?
Yes, under item A4, the City Council requests and communications, I've asked the mayor to bring to the next study session the feasibility of an infrastructure plan. And my concern is that the East End doesn't have infrastructure, so I want to look at that. And if we could do it next month. And number two is, how can we get staff, and I don't mean the city manager, to do a drive-through through the city and report all the potholes? I get complaints from residents about potholes, busted tires, and I say, there's an app. I don't use a computer. I don't have the internet. And is there a way to do that, maybe sections at a time?
I just wanted to mention, I brought that up to the city manager about, I think, maybe 3 months ago, and he actually came up with an innovative program. I don't know if you want to mention it, Tom?
Certainly. We have the Maintain MoVal program. We've set up a hotline that employees call in when they see things. I can tell you, I've used it. I can tell you that our top users over the program's initial 3 months have been our code and parking officers, which is wonderful. And we have had reports from every single department. And what we do is I've talked with employees about when you're out and about, look at things. Here's a number you can call. We've tracked who submits these items, and we just recently had our employee meetings for the quarter and praised our top reporters for the Maintain MoVal program. And that program doesn't even count the vast majority of self-reporting fixing tickets, if you will, that are done by our public works crews. When they're out there fixing things, maintaining other things, they identify, call in, report through their own system, and we get work done out there. So that was, I'm pretty excited about the program. It's something unique to us, and I appreciated the mayor's thoughtfulness in bringing such a concept to me.
Okay. Excuse me, does this system track the location of the calls? And is there a way to point out sections of the city that have not been reported? For example, let's say Day Street. No one's reported anything on Day Street. It doesn't mean that there's no potholes there. It just means no one has reported it. Is there a way that our staff can go and look where no reports have been made?
Absolutely. Michael, do you want to touch base on that? As the vast majority of the service calls and follow-ups are done by maintenance and operations, I think Michael can give you a good grasp of the volume and how they do that.
It sounds like the question really, though, if I can restate it, was, are we able to track locations? And the answer to that is we do track locations. And so we actually do it in a spreadsheet, and we're able to filter and otherwise identify locations like that. So the answer to that question is yes. But we also, as Tom was mentioning, the public works side. So when a public works crew goes out and responds to a call for a pothole on Day Street, they actually will continue to drive Day Street and look for the additional pothole. So it's not reported, it's not tracked in that fashion where it's reportable. It's done through a work order system. So that's an opportunity for our staff to do that as well. So they do that as part of their just functionality.
Another question is, do you have a way to go to sections of the city where no reports have been made? So let's say that you have this system and they reported potholes on Day Street, on Alessandro, but nothing on, let's see, District 2. Redlands Boulevard, okay. And no one has reported anything. Is anyone going out there to locations where no reports have been made?
So specific to potholes, there are, as was shown on there, called a heat map. So we have sort of our hot spots, if you will, that if we don't have any other calls or work services in the queue, we would go out and look at those. So the example I would give you is maybe like illegal dumping or something like that is a good example, because we'll go out to the hot spots that we know are routine for those kinds of things, or we will go out to the east end on Alessandro and look for potholes if it's not been reported, if there's nothing already in the queue for that. So we did about 5,000 pothole locations last year, so I would say there's not a lot of days where we're waiting for work to be done.
I'll be calling you.
Okay, if there's no further requests or comments, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting then at 7:48 p.m.